Hello,
Hi,
how are you, Yaakov?
Baruch Hashem, fine. How are you?
Good, good.
Glad to hear it. How are you?
Hi, Abe.
Hi, Mario.
How are you? I'm
Baruch
glad you
Hashem.
found my typo.
Okay.
Harold,
Hello. Hey, Bernie.
Hello, Harold. How are you?
Good. Were we holding?
Garments made of leather.
What page is that?
116, I think.
Oh,
119.
Did we already go 4 pages in? Oy vey.
Well, 118, actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it.
This is some leather garment.
Oh, when you were in the desert, did you see Sydney?
Yeah. We went out
How is he
Saturday night.
doing? How is
Better.
he?
I mean, his walking needs a little bit more, but he says he's getting better every day. So
Good, good.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that.
yeah.
Oh, we have a new member. Sai Litvin.
That's Ernie's son-in-law, I
Oh,
think. Or is Mechitten? I can't tell
Sai
yet.
is
Mechitten,
his,
it's
Oh, the
Mechitten.
Mechitten?
yeah, size is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello, good evening.
oh yeah. All right.
Hello.
Hey,
Oh,
everyone.
Rainbow.
Yeah. I guess our fearless leader is not here yet.
No.
He's running late.
It looks like it.
Call him, Walter, call him.
Twimbloom.
Yeah, David, mine on him.
Okay, are you all packed?
No, you want to come and pack for me? I'd like that.
Okay. Do you need some extra gatkes for me?
Yeah, I'm sure you've got upstairs, but they may be a little bit too small.
you dream.
Okay, this is on recorded now. It's not a good
Yeah, yeah. Mario's gonna blackmail you.
Okay, Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Sorry, I told you
Ernie.
this week is a reunion at Beth Jacob for the old Beth Jacob choir because of the Shloshim of Binyamin Glickman. So we won't. Sorry, I'm late. It won't be next week. Next week we'll start sharp at 8:00.
Okay.
We left off. Oh, thank you, Saul. Saul and Jerry are here in my home, enjoying all the wonderful
The whole spread.
the spread. So we're on page 117. We went through that garments made of leather are not required to have tzitzis put on them. In light of the Gemara's exemption of leather, poskim in the modern area have discussed whether this ptur should also apply to synthetic garments such as nylon. Mesh tzitzis are often made from these materials, and whether or not they can be used for tzitzis is a dispute among the following poskim. Should nylon be compared to silk and other natural materials like wool and cotton, which are subject to the mitzvah of tzitzis by Torah or rabbinic law, or should they be likened to leather, which is potter, because it's not a beged. The Torah says it's got to have a beged. Leather is not a beged. So this question was debated by two great 20th century halachis, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank and the Hart Tzvi, And of course, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Igros Moshe. The Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank was operated a little before Rav Moshe. He was in the late 40s, 50s in Eretz Yisrael. All the psak regarding can you use utilities on Shabbos, a lot of the psakim regarding the army, etc. As the modern state became into play, he was on the Beis Din HaGadol. And so let's see what the Shuthar Tzvi says. Uli inyan she'ilatenu, our question. Hine benylon yeshnei minim. First, he tells us there are two mechanisms or two methods of making nylon material. Yesh min nylon asui kulu chaticha achas v'lo mechutim. It's not nylon threads that are woven. It's like one piece of nylon or synthetic material that is cast. Ve'eno ma'isa oireg, and it's not woven. Uvetalit mimin zeh, and a beged made out of this type of garment, l'dat halavush, hoil v'loy nerag, ein alav shem beged l'schayv b'tzitzis. We learned the lavush last week that said if it's not woven, it's not a beged. So based on that, the nylon that's made as a single sheet, not woven, would not require tzitzis. Ulam, yeshgam nylon asuri michute nylon. There's nylon begodim that are made of nylon threads. Rumaisa oireg, that's woven. The talit, it means evadeshu nichla b'chlal beged v'chai b'tzitzis. According to Rav Frank, the definition of a beged with respect to being subject to tzitzis depends upon whether it is woven, rather than depending upon the identification of the material from which it is composed. Thus, even a synthetic garment may be subject to tzitzis if it has been fashioned through the weavings of threads by warp and woof, as in clothing made of polyester. By contrast, in case of a nylon garment that is cast as one unit and not woven, it is exempt from tzitzis because it is not considered a beged at all. Rav Moshe Feinstein takes a different view. According to him, synthetic materials are fundamentally distinct from natural fabrics, and therefore they're exempt from tzitzis wholesale, whether they were made as one unit or woven. So this is a machlokes Rav Moshe and Rav Tzvi Pesach. In the Shutigris Moshe and Or Chaim, Nishalti mididi anichbad v'chashuv mo'ad harav Yehuda Bodenheimer. I believe that Rav Bodenheimer was involved in the Machon Lev. Machon Lev, is a university in Yerushalayim where religious Jews, both of Mizrahi and Haredi persuasion, study high tech. And today it's under the deanship of Chaim Sukenik, who many of us know and are friendly with. But this is, and Bodenheimer may have sent this shaila to Rav Moshe because Rav Bodenheimer was involved in various technical questions. So, im yachol bosh b'mei hakayetz hachamim, beged shel dal kanfus l'kiu mitzvot tzitzis ma'aminim nylon v'reyan v'chadome. Could you wear in the summer, instead of a hot wool garment? We learned last week that Meikar Adin, many people, including the Mishnah Berurah, suggest that our tzitzis be made out of wool, because Minat Torah that fulfills all the requirements. But Rav Bodenheimer was asking, could we make a arba kanfois out of nylon or rayon, which is much lighter, and could you be mekayim tzitzis that way? That have been recently created. Nylon and rayon, these are products from the 40s and 50s, plastics. Remember in the famous movie The Graduate, they say to dust it off in one word.
Plastics.
Right, because this we think it's 100 years old. It's not. It's actually very, very recent. Bishafti. Ki mistaber lanias daiti. Moshe says, in my humble opinion, ki minim elu p'tor mitzitzis. These synthetic materials are potter. Even according to those people who say that all begodim, no matter what they're made out of, af mishar minim, like for example, even those mandomrim that we learned last week, who hold that even non-wool or flat or linen garments are chayv and tzitzis, and you can be makayim your mitzvah with those things, they would also agree that synthetics wouldn't work. They also agree, those mandomrim, those opinions that hold that other garments besides wool you can be chayav tzitzis. They know that there are garments that are potter from tzitzis, kamo beged shel or, like leather. ואף שיש קצת לחלק מבגדי אור, שעשן חוטין ואורגן. Rav Moshe says there is a distinction by leather. For example, if leather was cut into strips and then woven, the hasamaya kvar or shalem, because it started off as a large piece of leather, shahaya raya lasses meno beged kamoshu. You could have made a beged as one, like when you make a leather coat, it's one piece of leather. Ach sheshina v'chat chutchil chutin. Even though somebody went ahead and cut them into pieces, shalakain ein al zeh shem arigus. Rav Moshe is mechadesh here that even if you cut the leather into strips and you somehow wove them together, you can't undo the fact that it came from a one piece of leather which the Torah pottered. Aval minim de nylon v'reya. No, but clothing that is woven. Our clothing is woven. Aval minim de nylon v'reya. But the species like nylon and rayon, if they were originally made into threads, well, you have no other way of making it except through weaving. He has a tzad to be noited towards Rav Tzvi Pesach. He says maybe there is an Indian of being woven. It's not comparable to this case of leather that's cut into strips. He says, lo nira klal lechalek. He would not make such a distinction. Nylon is not comparable to garments made out of wool and linen. The chior nemar liptur. The Torah says leather is potter. Shenema shema shelo dami laor lo nifter. Should we say that a garment like synthetic nylon, which is comparable to leather, should not be potter? The fact that the Torah used the word beged wanted to tell us only godim that are in that category will be chayv. It's got to be similar to a regular natural product to make it chayv and tzitzis. So Rav Moshe comes out that says that nylon you would not be chayv and tzitzis, and therefore you wouldn't potter yourself to wear tzitzis made out of nylon because there's no chiyuv.
I would just note that this was actually a very common style of Rav Moshe in his chuvas. He will often give you the other side and say, well, maybe it's this way, but then ultimately he decides not. Not all of us can do that, but that's Rav Moshe's style in many chuvas.
Right, and then therefore you get a good hekef of the whole sugya.
Correct.
It shows you the other side and why he's thinking about it, but then he immediately immediately
He ends
dumps
up,
on it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
What about paper? What about paper? Paper garment. It's made out of a plant. If there's such a thing as a paper garment, put tzitzis on. If you they make, because it's not woven, but it could be. I don't know. Maybe how was it put together? How to make paper?
Well, remember the Levush talked about a rigon. So the weaving status seems to be part and parcel of this.
That's the one banyan, but the other ones. What about? They both hold that. Both Pesach Frank and Moshe both hold that weaving is a requirement.
Yeah. Well, no, they're both noit to the Levush regarding that. But a paper would not be considered a beged.
They can make a style. They could make a style of paper today for garments.
I know, but leather doesn't fall under the category of beged, and paper wouldn't either. But that's a question we can ask. It's not.
No, but beged comes from a plant. Beged comes from paper.
Not necessarily that we're talking about. It has to come from a plant.
Ernie, do we know what year this tshuva came
Say
about?
again?
Do we know what year this came about?
Rav Moshe's this tshuva is probably in the 50s or 60s.
So that's back then polyester wasn't the norm. I mean, nowadays they make polyester suits, polyester shirts, and those are begadim, aren't they not?
Right. So we said
those are woven.
Polyester. Polyester is woven. So according to the Hart Tzvi, that wouldn't be a problem. But Rav Moshe,
But it's synthetic.
Rav Moshe rejects all synthetic material as that they're not considered begadim, and therefore they would be potter from tzitzis. So even polyester, the way Rav Moshe is learning, would not be chayiv.
So is it usher? Because you see people like in basketball, you see them wearing like the mesh seat.
It's not a matter, it's not usher, but remember,
This is not a mitzvah.
the person's wearing the tzitzis because he wants to be Makai in the midst of tzitzis while he's playing
but-
basketball. He's not going to be Makai because if
lot
the
of the-
garment is potter, then you're not Makai the mitzvah when you're wearing it.
But a
It's not
lot of
usher.
the tzitzit that you see, I'm just telling you, are polyester and they are a mix. Some of them have maybe something else in them, but they definitely are a mix, and you can see that the way it hangs and everything else. And that this, I mean, I've seen thousands and thousands.
So you would have, if they're woven, you have Ratzvi Pesach Frank to rely on that you're Mekayim tzitzis. It would not be according to Rav Moshe, but it would be according to Ratzvi Pesach Frank. The tzitzis I wear are cotton. The ones that are not wool are cotton. And that we learn according to the Ramah is perfectly fine for Chiyuv tzitzis.
You check the label, it's cotton, because some of it's not cotton either. You got to check what it says.
Yeah, the regular, those tzitzis that you buy a lap tzedekah from the Jewish stores are usually made out of cotton. But you can check, absolutely. Now, Rav Moshe's argument is based on the fact.
Just to go back to what Sai
yeah.
said, it's true. Rav Moshe, I don't know if it's true, it was 1960, 1970. Basically the proliferation of exactly all these woven materials, which are breathable, which are everything today. You have breathable polyester. You have all these things which people wear, which are considered levush, pure levush, and some of them are considered warm and so I'm just not sure what's going on today. In other words, does this go through from that time? In other words, the whole process is different today.
Okay, well, we're not through with the opinions.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
And by the way, I wanted to welcome my Mechutin Sai Litwin, who's
Yeah.
also joining us for the first time. That's right. He heard about it because we spent the Shabbos in the Valley visiting my daughter Eliza and Jake, my son-in-law Jake, and Sai immediately wanted to jump on board. So Sai, welcome, and
Thank you very much.
and jump right in. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
By the way, before
yes.
I just looked up the Tshuva in Igros Moshe. So that one doesn't have a date, but the next few do, as Tufshin Yud Test, which
sure,
is
50s, 59.
So this Tshuva
Right.
was in 59.
Right. So it's a Sai. It's a great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
It's a good point. Let's see what the other shitas say. I mean, according to Tzvi Pesach Frank, there's no problem with polyester tzitzis because they're made. By the way, in the line in Rav Moshe that in mitchila nasu lechutin, if these synthetics were made originally as shememela hariga hechrach b'amula yesh lehem chashivus harigas to lo dami laor. And then, of course, like Rav Yaakov said, he went away from that, but perhaps these new synthetic elements are completely made as thread. So we'd have to see whether we don't know what Rav Moshe would say about it. But let's see what the other opinions are regarding this. Rav Moshe argues based on the fact that the Torah does not write explicitly that a leather garment is exempt from tzitzis, but merely that a beged requires tzitzis, and or is not a beged. So that's how they reject or. Accordingly, whatever is unlike a beged with respect to its material composition is completely exempt from tzitzis. Thus, materials excluded from tzitzis include leather and synthetic materials which do not require weaving. Now, if you made a synthetic material that needed weaving, see, they used to make nylon, it was one piece, and it wasn't woven. So that's what Rav Moshe understood as a garment that would be potter like leather. But I don't know the process of what Sai is talking about today, polyester and those things. If those things are manufactured lichatchila from thread, and then they're woven, it could be Rav Moshe would have a different opinion. I'm saying I know for sure, but in economy, things have changed. What?
You have to find out what is the natural, right?
For being durable, so it's woven.
It is, yeah.
It's all a petroleum base though. All these the Dacron and polyester are all petroleum based.
Now,
And that's it's how that's made. It's not woven. It's called garnetted, made into little chunks. We used to make sleeping bags. I have a factory made a sleeping bag for years. You'd get these little chunks of materials which were made from petroleum, and we call garnetted. You put it through these big machines, and that comes out, not wool. It comes out like cotton does, and then you quilt it, and that's how we made sleeping bags. But it's all petroleum based.
Okay.
So there's no, yeah.
A third view is taken by the Tzitz Eliezer of Eliezer Waldenberg. The Tzitz Eliezer is like a 15-volume Shilas and Shuvas, lived in Eretz Yisrael, lived in Tel Aviv, or Bnei Brak, and passed away probably within the last 20 years. It was a major posek regarding medical halacha. Who feels that while a person would not be able to recite a bracha upon tzitzis fashioned from a nylon garment, such a garment could not be exempted wholesale from tzitzis. Therefore, he writes that it's preferable to wear tzitzis from other materials such as cotton, rather than from synthetic materials. And the Yalkut Yosef from Vadia Yosef adopts the same position. Says the Tzitz Eliezer, near la halacha, da'adeh noited big day nylon v'adoim elen chayovin b'tzitzis. He thinks that big day nylon would be chayv in tzitzis. Ubeprat k'shasuim b'derech shel hariga, especially if they were made in a woven way. That means they were made into threads and woven. Ve'in lilbosh arba kanfos mehen though, mibli she'itol b'hen tzitzis. If you're going to put on a garment of nylon that's got 4 corners, you can't put it on unless it's got tzitzis. The kar of gam levadai shelo goyrim ema mishar minim chutz mitzemer upishtim. He says they're close to cotton or other minim other than wool and linen regarding this din, ubiprat kishorim, especially if you wove them. Ach linyan bracha kedai shelo levarach aleim. He takes a middle approach. You've got to put tzitzis on that garment if you're going to wear that garment, but you shouldn't make a bracha on it. Ubrachas ha'ima'akvos. Of course, you're makayim. For example, you shake a lulav. You don't make a bracha on al mitzvahs lulav, al netilas lulav. You're still makayim the mitzvah of lulav. The bracha, not making the bracha is not ma'akev. So he says, put on the tzitzis, but don't make a bracha. Umutav yoter kishakasha lil boshar minim. He says it's better to wear cotton. We learned last week the kulu chayavin midoraisa. All garments, not just wool and linen, but all garments, including cotton, would be chay midoraisa, which is how we paskin. Those of us, for example, who don't wear woolen tzitzis all the time. The Mishnah Berurah said you should try to be noited towards that. So the Tzitz Eliezer is a compromised position. And the Pischei Tshuva writes that while one should not recite a bracha in the case of a nylon garment, there is still a distinction between a woven garment and one made from a single swath of material, like what Alan Genara was telling us. Ein chayv b'tzitzis elamashu hugder b'tor b'klal beged. That which is required tzitzis, it's got to have a shem beged. Lafuke, for example, to exclude beged, or she'ena nikra beged. A leather garment is not called a beged. Well, in big day nylon, polyester, polyethylene, shenase mineft, that are made from gasoline, from oil, petroleum, bitosefes sha'ar kimiklim, and when you add some other chemicals in there, she'enan lo min achai v'lo min hatzomech, they're not from live animals, and they don't grow from the ground. He says the Gdolei HaPoskim have debated between themselves, do we compare them to leather, make them poter legamri or not? Umaskonos kamen migdolei HaPoskim. Uh-oh. I didn't realize that. One second, I just got a page. 1 second. This is Dr. Agatstein. Okay. Okay. I have to talk to Dr. Iannucci. What kind of food bar there? Let me talk to Dr. Iannucci. Okay, I can't help you. Sharad, hi, I'm sorry to call you at home. I got called from Lakewood about Mrs. Stubblefield. You have her NPO past midnight and consented her for a procedure. Meanwhile, Larissa Garber has transferred her tonight or to Los Al to start radiation therapy.
Ernie, maybe you want to mute.
Okay, back in business. So Maskonas Kama Migdolei HaPoskim, the conclusion of the poskim, he says the consensus is that when the nylon or synthetic garment is made without being woven, but it's cast as one piece, everybody holds its potter mitzitzis. And versus lebein big day nylon, ametsuin asuin mi begada oirig mechute nylon, sheyesh l'chayven mitzitzis, and yesh memar bekanfois. However, if you have a polyester or nylon garment that's been rendered through thread by weaving into a garment with four corners, they're going to be chayiv in tzitzis. Omnam b'vaday yesh l'chol yirei shamayim lahakpid v'lo lotzis yidei choivas levishas tilas cotton mibgodim hayasumi beged syntheti. He says that a yirei shamayim should not attempt to be yotzei his chov of tzitzis by wearing such a talis cotton made out of synthetic garment. And even those that are mekel, like Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, although he didn't say specifically not to make a bracha, but comes out according to Tzitz Eliezer, the way he's learning in the Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, that you would not make a bracha on such a garment. Okay, that seems to be the consensus of what's going on. What about women in tzitzis? We learned above that according to Rav Shimon in the Gemara, women are potter from the mitzvah of tzitzis. Why? Because it doesn't apply at night, and therefore it's considered time bound. That means if it applied to day and night, so that's a mitzvah that's not a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, and women would be chayiv. But since it's specifically tied to the day, it's considered time bound, and women are potter from those kind of mitzvahs. And the Shulchan Aruch brings it down. Noshim avodim pturim b'nei shehi mitzvah saseh shazman grama. Now, concerning most time-bound mitzvos, women are permitted to fulfill them if they do so. Though Ashkenazic and Sephardic customs differ as to whether they should recite a bracha or not. We Ashkenazim allow our women, based on the Ramah, that if they choose to shake a lulav
They can.
or sit in the sukkah, they make a bracha. The Sephardim do not, because the Mechaber, even though he says they can do the mitzvah, they should not make a bracha on it. So that's a machlokas between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. It's one of the major machlokim where we see a difference in psak, where women who choose to do a mitzvah, whether they make a bracha or not. So for this reason, women may certainly fulfill mitzvahs such as sitting in the sukkah and listening to the shofar, period. Based upon this principle, the Ramah writes that a woman may don tzitzis and recite the bracha if they wish. It fulfills all the other criteria, lulav, sukkah, shofar. However, he writes that practically they should not do so, since there's no absolute obligation of wearing tzitzis, even for men. Remember, we learned that if you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, there's no chiyuv of tzitzis, because we're makpid to put it on because we want to be makayim the mitzvah. But so since it's a rishus in a sense, women shouldn't chase after that mitzvah. Therefore, for a woman to wear tzitzis would appear as yehura. Yehura means you wear like a shtreimel and a bekesha when you're just a regular person. That's mechzik yehura means you put on airs, that you make yourself like a big Talmud Chacham and you're really not. So they're saying women is the same thing. It can be translated as misplaced piety. Says the Ramah, but it doesn't look good. Since it's not a chiyuv on the person, shaking the lulav is a chiyuv on the person. A person on the first day of Sukkot has a chiyuv on his head, on his person, to shake the lulav, or to listen to the shofar, or to sit in the sukkah. So women also have that chiyuv. Or since it's a chiyuv gavra, they can choose to accept that mitzvah. And therefore, according to Ashkenazim, they make a bracha on it, and according to Sephardim, they don't.
Can a woman wear a four-cornered garment then?
L'chora, that would be a problem if they didn't put on tzitzis. They should avoid wearing, because l'chora they would have the chiyuv based on this law.
Why would they have the?
No, Alan Genauer is asking if we cannot wear a four-cornered garment without putting tzitzis on. So he's saying, since women can choose to do the mitzvah, if they wear a four-cornered garment, he's asking, would they be over the concept of being mevatel and aseh?
No, because they're potus. The fact that she wants to do it, it's optional. There is no issue for a woman to wear.
There's no answer for us either. It would be it's a bitul aseh.
But she doesn't have say.
Since you want to say, since they're potter, they would not have. They'd be allowed to wear a four-cornered garment.
But women are potter from a lot of things, but
take a
they're not
lulav
considered.
without a brocha.
What
A
was that?
woman can take a lulav without a brocha if she chooses to.
Yes, she can, but she's
Yeah,
allowed to make. She's allowed to make the bracha.
Mention as Shazman Grama Bashofar says it's not Baal Toisif, yeah? It's not Baal Toisif. What's the Baal Toisif?
No, it's not a matter about toisif. Remember, there's a concept here that if you have a four-cornered garment that doesn't have tzitzis on it, we cannot wear such a thing. So he asked a good question. Women are potter from it. So technically there's no, but if they choose to do it, so they didn't choose to do it.
No, but if they choose to do it, so then there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think
Alan asked the question. If they wear a four-cornered garment without tzitzis on it.
Yeah. Why would they be?
No.
Why would they be?
Because they're not obligated in the mitzvah.
Why would they be?
To them, it's nothing. A four-corner garment is nothing. It's-
Because of this issue that if they want to do it, they can do it. It's not like they're usher to do it.
But what
Actually,
one has
footnote-
nothing to do with the other.
Footnote 15, while not exactly on point, does help on this point.
Say
If you look
again?
at if you look at footnote 15, it actually
Yeah,
helps on this
let's
point.
do footnote 15.
It's not
The
decisive.
Aruch HaShulchan elaborates about this issue and concludes that women should not be allowed to practice this mitzvah. In addition, some commentaries write that a woman donning tzitzis violates the prohibition of not wearing a man's garment, lo tilbash gever simlat isha, and vice versa. On the other hand, Rav Moshe Feinstein, written to Rav Yehuda Kelmer, who was the Rav of West Hempstead, my mechutna, who passed away this year, considers the possibility of a woman wearing a distinctly different colored garment with tzitzis as being acceptable if she does so for sincere religious reasons, as opposed to feminist motivations. Though he himself was unsure whether individuals with sincere motivations existed in his time. The Pnine Alocha of Eliezer Malamed rules, based upon this truth, that women who wish to wear tzitzis may do so in private to avoid the issue of Yehura. He doesn't accept the consideration of Lo Yilbash as the normative one among the poskim. We'd have to say that a four-cornered garment, she's got no chiyuv to put it on, so she wouldn't be over anything. If she wants to be yoitza the mitzvah, it's a different story. I think that's where we're at with that. Okay, any other comments, points, aros, issues before we move on?
What's Yehuda again?
The Mechzer Yehura is a person acting
Showing off.
more from than they are. Like I said, Jerry, if one of us put on a Streimel and a Bekesher, we're not really that on that level. So that would be Mechzer Yehura. Now, if somebody's growing in their Yiddishkeit and he wants to wear a different levush on Shai, that's not necessarily Mechzer Yehura, but they said blanketly women trying to do that seems out of place.
So what you're saying, all Hasidim are,
Saul is showing me this picture.
yeah,
That's Saul on Purim.
all Hasidim are on such a level that they can, come on, Ernie, they can wear it. It's by them, it's not considered Mechzer Chiyura.
Exactly, because in their communities, that's the
That's a
normal.
minhag. No, that's their minhag.
Yeah.
It's a curious
No,
question.
but I'm saying, somebody who, if they act in a way that is in a show off way in their Yiddishkeit, they're not really that way, and it's trying to do it in a non-anivus way. Could you pass me something to drink here?
It's called a haka in today's vernacular.
A hacker. Okay.
I'm curious, good question. How many people here wear cotton tzitzis all the time versus wool?
I wear cotton tzitzis. I don't always wear. I wear wool tzitzis. I wear cotton tzitzis. I wear both. Now remember, the Mishnah Brura advised us to wear wool tzitzis because then you're mekayim l'chol adayas mitzvahs d'oraisa, including the mechaber.
Cotton or wool?
That's
How do you
cotton.
know? It's cotton.
I mean, living in a hot environment. I mean, Israel even. I mean, people walk around most of the year with wool tzitzis is not so easy to do.
Right.
There's no problem. We learned already. If you're Ashkenazi and you follow the Ramah, there's no problem wearing cotton tzitzis. The Mishnah Brura said a Baal Nefesh should wear a wool tzitzis. So that's
Ernie, is there enough kamina between a talus and tzitzis here?
Same thing.
Same
Most
thing.
of us wear.
But a lot of people wear wool.
Tzitzis.
But a lot of people wear wool talesim and they don't wear wool tzitzit.
Right.
There's a big difference.
I know, but there's no
This is
difference in
the
the
right
approach. Huh?
Big talis is the raisa.
A big talus is the rice. So if you wear a wool big talus, tzitzis.
No.
Sure. Ernie, we learned with you that you only make one bracha. You put a talus on,
But the talus is what you
don't
make
say
the
with the
bracha on. You
tzitzis,
don't make
the
on
one
your
bracha,
tzitzis.
and you say, you know,
Talis cotton is
I
also
know, you know,
derived.
that's right.
So
So you don't make,
You don't make the bracha. If you're going to put on your talus, you
There's
don't make
one,
the
there's one mitzvah. There's one mitzvah tzitzis. There is no difference between a talus and the tzitzis you wear during the day. You don't walk around with your talus, so therefore you wear tzitzis. You want to have the mitzvah of tzitzis with you all
Yeah,
the
but
time. So
but the
Mishnah
bracha you
Berurah-
make is on
so-
the talus, and you're young.
So the
with the-
Mishnah Berurah says you should wear a wool tzitzis all day because it's the wool is midorais according to both the Mechaber and the Ramah.
But let me ask you: when you get up in the morning, you go to daven or whatever. You don't make on your tzitzit. You make on your talus.
Yeah, but you could make it if you wore a wool tzitzis. We have the minig to go into shul and make one bracha on the talus and the patters your tzitzis as well. But it's not like one has adifus over the other.
I can guarantee you that a lot of people make on the tzitzis and then come to shul and make on the talus.
No, you don't have to do it that way.
I understand, but people, I'm just telling you what until we learned that Gemara with you, basically that's what I
It's like
think people.
remember Natilas Yadayim, that machlokas between the Rosh and the Rashba, that
You make it, yeah.
my minig is not to make Natilas Yadayim at home when I wash my hands. I wait on a Mesaderit when I'm at shul right before the bracha. It's the same thing with tzitzis. Some people might have the minig when they put on their talis cut and they make a bracha and they do it again with it. I don't do that. What is the minig of the people here? Do you make two brachas or do you make one bracha?
One. Since we learned with you, we will make one bracha.
Since we learned
I'm
with
not
you,
sure
Yeah.
did we?
we learned it in the Gemara.
No, but we said one bracha regarding Natilas Yadayim.
No, that
we
also.
said one bracha according to
Yeah.
We learned the Gemara together with you, and he's my
Right.
aidus.
That's right. That's
Aid.
right. You're
But
right.
then you're also
Right.
doing it on a wool garment also, so it's better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Better do it that
But
way
think
anyway.
about it, that's when you make the bracha on the wool garment, you're fulfilling all the shittas that it's doraisa. Remember, the Ramah holds that midoraisa cotton is also chayiv tzitzis.
But by the way,
Mechaber did not hold like that. So the
I'm
Mishnah
not
Berurah
sure.
advised us to wear it the whole, but the Mishnah Berurah wants us to wear wool tzitzis a whole day.
But I'm not so sure those non-slip talasim are wool.
The who?
The non-slip talasim that everybody wears, I'm not sure if they're wool. Does
According
anybody
to the,
know?
But according to the Ramah, Walter, you have no problem making a bracha.
I know, I understand. I'm just saying the reason to make on the tzitz, on the talus is because it's a doraisi, because you're making on wool. I'm not sure that the talasim are all wool today either.
Right. I just want to modify what you said. It is a deraisa according to the Ramah, even if you made it, and even if it's not wool. That's the whole concept. That's the machlokas between Mechaber and Ramah.
So then why would you only make one bracha? You would make it on your tzitzit when you put it on.
We're mesader these brachas at one time when we're in shul, like the same way we do Natilas Yadayim. That's
Yeah,
how
but
that's why we make the bracha
tzitzit
talis
is not on the same thing as al mitzvah tzitzit. It's a different bracha.
We say lisatef b'tzitzis.
So what's the difference of the intent of the two mitzvahs, the hisatef and or al mitzvah tzitzis? Why do we make two separate?
Hang on. We have another, 7 simonim, and we're going to go into the difference between atifa and what to did about wearing tzitzis. So that's coming. And we're also going to see this debate. We have not yet discussed the issue of the bracha, of should it be done in shul? I don't know which Gemara you're talking about. That's coming in a few weeks.
I can remind you, Ernie, you remember every Gemara and every line. Come on.
I know, but we're not there yet. We're gonna have the
It's a
inyanim of
surprise.
bracha. Here.
Elazar, I don't know where the guy was that night.
On page,
I remember specifically what you
Gentlemen,
said.
page
So do
190,
I. So do I. Yeah.
page 197. Don the talis gadol and talis cotton. How do we do it? Page 197. That's we're going to learn the dinim of the various shitas. Should you make the bracha at home? We have not learned that yet. We did learn a machlokas regarding the tilas yadayim. Do you do it at home? Do you do it in shul? We have not yet dealt with the issue that is being discussed here regarding the talis cotton and talis gadol, which we will get to. which we will get to. And we'll see why it is that we make a different bracha, and is there a difference between the wool, etc. But up until now, we're learning that according to the Ramah, we're makayim the mitzvah of tzitzis, whether it's wool or whether it's cotton or whether it's linen or whatever garment it's made out of. And the only thing is, talis is what we wear in shul when we daven. And there were people who wear talesim all day over their head, like Rav Yochanan in the Gemara. We don't do that, but we continue our mitzvah tzitzis by wearing the talis cotton all day. And the Mishnah Berurah told us better to wear it wool. Chaim Eisenberg is discussing, well, it's hard to do that. For Ashkenazim, it's not a problem because we can rely on the Ramah. That's where we are so far. Let's go weiter.
Then is it a problem that you're putting on a four-cornered garment without doing a bracha? You're doing a mitzvah without a bracha. Isn't that a problem?
At which point? You mean at home when you put on
at home when you put on your talis katan, you're doing a mitzvah without a bracha.
So let's wait until we get to chapter 6, whatever, page 197, and we will hear all about the debates regarding that issue, whether you should say a bracha on the talis cotton at home or not, and who says, or is it better to wait later on? Yeah, it will discuss it.
Hello, Jeff. I'll talk to you a long time. Jeff?
How are you, Lazo? How are you? Good. There you go.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Good to see your ceiling.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, page 135. Whether or not a particular cloth or garment is subject to the mitzvah of tzitzis is a function of a number of considerations. One discussed at length in the introductory shir is the material composition of the item, which we discussed. Wool, linen, cotton. Aside from this, the identity, appearance, and utility of the garment also determine whether it is subject to the chiyuv of tzitzis. In the present shir, we'll examine a number of the criteria used to decide whether a particular item or garment should have tzitzis attached or not. First, the number of corners. The first issue addressed relates to the number of corners that a particular garment has. The Torah states that a person must affix tzitzis to each of the four corners of a garment. Gdilim ta'aselach al arba kanfus ksuscha shetachase bo. It's a pasuk in Dvarim Chav Beis. What is the halachic status of a garment that has more or fewer than four corners? This is addressed in Masechta Menachos. Tanya, al arba kanfus ksuscha. Arba v'loy shalosh means four, not three. Ata omer arba v'loy shalosh or ene ala arba v'loy chamesh. Maybe it doesn't mean to reject three. Maybe it comes to the word four comes to reject five.
For a minimum.
So kishu omer asher techase ba harei balas chamesh omer. So when the Torah says any garment that covers you, it already includes a five-cornered garment. Umani mekayim al arba v'loy shalosh. So the Gemara doesn't accept that logic. I mean, a three-cornered garment could cover you as well. Whenever the Gemara asks a question, Mara Isa, means there's a flaw in the logic. The logic could have gone either way. What do you mean, techasebod? You could be techasebod with a three-cornered garment as well. So why did you reject three corners? So, Marbani balas chamesh, sheyesh bichlal chamesh arba. Well, within five is four. Umotzeni balas sholosh she'en bichlal sholosh arba. Three doesn't have four. So it's a different svara. A five-corner garment has a four-corner garment, but a three-corner garment doesn't reach the level of a four-corner garment. According to the Gemara here, if a garment has fewer than four corners, it's potter from tzitzis. If it has more than four corners, the tzitzis must be affixed to four of the corners.
If you're wearing a tzitzis cut underneath, and then you wear a garment on top of it that's four corners,
you'd have to put tzitzis on that.
Of
course.
The one below will not fulfill the obligation.
Jerry asked me if you're wearing a talis cotton already, and then you put a four-cornered garment on, the din is you'd have to put tzitzis on that as well. The din is in the beged, it's a connection, it's beged and a gavra. You cannot be wearing a four-cornered garment that doesn't have tzitzis on it. So if you want, it's like putting on a second pair. What do you mean? Rav Scheinberg used to wear 20 pairs of tzitzis.
Yeah.
Each one had tzitzis on it. The one pair of the one tzitzis you have doesn't potter the other one.
Anyone wearing a garment, four-corner garment with tzitzis on there. They put it on there? Have you seen it? Have you seen anyone wearing that?
Well, you have to see a four-corner, most of our garments
Most
are
of
not
them-
four
but
corners.
Most of them are wearing a tzitzis katan.
I understand,
that's
but they're
it,
not, but they're not wearing a four-cornered garment. If they were, there would be a chiyuv tzitzis in it. For example, Jerry, if the corner is rounded, it's not considered a corner. It's got to be a squared off. We're going to learn what are the criteria of the shape of the garment.
Yeah.
We're going to learn that in this simon. So, however, the Gemara says
A sport jacket has four. Yeah.
but it's
Yeah,
rounded out.
sport.
It's rounded.
Exactly right. That's the problem. Right. The back of it's slit in it, which is two, but because it's rounded, you don't have your butt from
It's
wearing
not
it.
considered a four-corner garment.
Yeah.
So, however, the Gemara Masechta Zvachim presents another baraisa, which states otherwise. When a garment has more than four corners, it is exempt in the same manner as a garment that has fewer than four corners. Tanya Yidich in Masechta Zvachim Yud Ches Amud Beis, another baraisa says, Al arba kanfos ksuscha, arba v'loy shalosh, arba v'loy chamesh. So here's a Gemara that is exactly not like the Gemara Menachos. Here it rejects a three-corner garment and a five-corner garment.
Isn't this
So
isn't this a Baltoisiv issue?
Well, the Baltoisif would be maybe if you put five tzitzis on the five-corner garment. That's why the original opinion was if you have a five-cornered garment, you'd only put you'd only put tzitzis on the four corners. Now, the Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the Baraisa cited in Menachos, according to which a garment is subject to tzitzis even if it has more than four corners. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch in Aruch Chai Yud. First, Ptura. The corners is exempt. Yesh lo yoser midal, if the garment has more than four corners. Chayeves, it's obligated. You don't put tzitzis on all five, you put it on four, the farthest away from a part that you can. The Aruch HaShulchan offers an explanation for this halacha. Just to remind everybody, the Aruch HaShulchan lived up until about 1910. He was like the Mishnah Berurah, but he wrote it on all four halakim of Shulchan Aruch. Remember, the Mishnah Berurah is only on Orach Chaim. And many American Jews followed the Aruch HaShulchan for many years until the Mishnah Berurah sort of took over and became the sort of the standard normative halachic text.
Aruch HaShulchan is actually a little later than the Mishnah Berurah, just as the point of.
Well, the Mishnah Berurah died in 1933.
Yeah, but he came out with his Sefer in 1898. First
Oh, Ein Hanami, the Sefer came out.
Right.
The
So
Sefer, as a person, he lived. He lived shorter. Now, the Aruch HaShulchan offers an explanation for this halacha, which requires tzitzis to be placed upon a garment with more than four corners, and exempts a garment of fewer than four corners. The aforementioned verse addresses the garment with which you cover yourself. This indicates that tzitzis are required of any garment fit for covering, as determined by possessing four or more corners. A three-cornered garment is unfit for covering, and is therefore excluded from the definition with which you cover yourself. The Bas Shalosh, says the Aruch HaShulchan, Eino yafel l'kisui haguf. It's not built and set up to cover the body properly. The kol meshulash u'mechudad. It's like pointed. Lafuki kol mashiyosim arba, to exclude a garment that might have more than four corners. Areyu ka'arba. But it has a minimum four corners. V'roy l'kisui haguf. It would be appropriate to cover your body. V'hu adin lebas vavo yoser, even six corners or more. It would have the same svara. The Mishnah Berurah adds that lechatchila, it is best to affix tzitzis to a garment that has exactly four corners, in order to adhere to the rulings of those Rishonim who exempt a garment with more than four corners. Right? Chayeves v'yesh poitrin. The Mishnah Berurah says that a five-corner garment is chayiv, but there are those that are pater, that say that it's exempt. Lachein ein la'asa is bas he lechatchila. When you're making tzitzis, you shouldn't make one with five corners. Because of our prima godim, the ladasa poitrin, according to the ones that pater a five-corner garment, oson talitos ktanim shalano sheyesh beis hatzaver. Our talis buttons that have a space for our neck, mikol makom rov sosum. See, there might be a corner there, and however, most of it is closed. Umiyu ira sharov patuach. But if it comes that the majority of that garment is opened, yase bekolner she'oisma chayatim ktsas agul. He should make a neck hole. The tailor should make it somewhat rounded as opposed to squared off to make like the picture. So, because you might have a corner there.
You're talking the bottom.
The
here?
bottom
No, no.
picture. Flaps in the neck. Look at the picture on the bottom. Flaps in the neck of the tzitzis that could constitute corners according to the Prima Garden. And this is a photo
So this
courtesy.
has 6 corners?
6 corners, correct. So the chatchila, you should avoid that. Says the Shulchan Aruch, haknafayim tzarich shiyu merubat v'lo shiyu agulos. So here's another. Oh, the Mishnah Berurah's solution to avoid complications of a many-cornered garment is based on the distinction between a cornered edge and a rounded edge. This distinction is mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, which clearly states that tzitzis are only placed on a garment with sharp-pointed corners and not with rounded corners. Haknafayim, the corners, tzarich shiyu merubat, they should be square, v'lo shiyu agulos, not that they should be round. It bears noting that the p'tur, the exemption of a rounded edge, may be effective in solving assorted situations in which the status of a given garment is uncertain. Like we mentioned tonight, the sport coat or suit coat or something like that. Okay. So I'm going to stop here. We'll leave off on 138. We'll probably finish this and we'll start the sugya of the strings as well next week. Next week we'll start at 8 o'clock. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, what a towel that you put, let's say you're on the beach or you're in a patio or you're by the pool.
Very good. We're gonna talk about towels. We're gonna talk about blankets.
How's that a baguette? How's a towel a baguette?
The baguette.
We'll see. Well,
When you're very cold on the beach, you put a towel around you to keep you warm.
towels are going to be
How about you
discussed,
at night?
Ernie, I have a question on this last comment.
and shawls. By the way, shawls, towels, aprons, blankets, scarves, suits, coats. We're going to learn all of it next week.
In the introduction,
It's of Arlene. Go ahead, Jeff.
in the introduction on page 135 on top, it says whether or not a particular cloth or garment is subject to the mitzvah of tzitzis is a function of a number of considerations. It's sort of vague when you read this little paragraph here, whether if you hit one consideration, whether the other one is irrelevant or not necessarily. In other words, if it has 4 corners, but then you have the machlokas on the beged, it seems to imply when you read it that maybe the 4 corners is enough to say you wear it. And correct me if I'm wrong, especially the third sentence. Aside from this consideration, the identity, appearance, and utility of this garment also determine whether it is subject to the obligation of tzitzis or not.
It's giving us a preface to what's coming in this shiur, meaning blankets. That's the utility. Aprons. How is it used? So we're going to see these different criteria, which will either say that they have to have tzitzis, or most of them are exclusionary criteria. They're going to say it's not a beged, and therefore it's potter, or it's rounded, and therefore it's not 4-cornered. So it that sentence just sort of prepares it for what's coming in this chapter. All the various criteria that we'll be able to say, oh, those things don't need tzitzis because their utility is not the right thing, or whatever. So that's a good. It just sort of prepares what's coming later on.
Good, thank you.